So we'll call the meeting to order. I'm assuming everybody's had a chance to review their minutes from April 8th. With the delay here with our 30-minute delay. So we'll look for a motion to approve the April 8th, 2022 SEDA COG MPO minutes, please. Motion by Lincoln, thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Katie, thank you very much. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Same sign. Hearing none, the minutes have passed. We'll just slide quickly into agenda item D, just for sake of keeping her on schedule. These were the TIP administrative modifications and amendments. We did have an amendment come in yesterday. We can bring that up on the screen if you're able, NK, for the people joining us virtually. And in the packet, that was your separate little 8.5 by 11 sheet. It's for in District 2. It's a safety project on Route 22 in Mifflin County to install some solar powered chevrons. So this is a new project using federal funding, so it qualifies it as amendment. And so we would need a vote to approve that. So it's up on the screen now for the virtual folks that are joining us since it came yesterday. And I'll just turn it over to Mark Schultz if you wanted to give us any more updates or information background on this.
This is a new initiative within our area. These are lighted solar powered chevrons that will work sequentially in curve areas. We're combining this project with 2 locations and project in Center County, and we're hoping for a quick turnaround on the project and be able to secure a much better bid by joining this with other similar lighted solar powered sequential chevrons in the area.
Great. Any questions from Mark or anyone else about this amendment or what they're trying to accomplish? Okay, could we have a motion to approve the new solar powered chevrons HSIP funded project? We have a motion by Mark Calusi. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Carrie. Thank you very much. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you much. The rest of the items are all just administrative modifications. They're included in the packet. The District 2 changes are on pages 10 to 11, and District 3 changes are on pages 12 through 17. So those were shared in the advanced packet on Monday, and also included in your packet here today. Mark, is there anything you wanted to run down, Schultz, as part of this you wanted to point out for members?
No, I think one of the most significant ones was management actions that we had were for Valley Street. We had utility coordination needs on Valley Street work. We were able to utilize some construction phase funds within the project and reserve line item funds to make that work. So Valley Street 1005 is on track, and we're looking forward to a bid later this year.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you for the progress. I know that's a major project on Valley Street 1005 in Mifflin County, so thank you. Any other questions about the adjustments in District 2? Okay, do we have a motion to approve the District 2 administrative modifications?
I'll make it.
Motion by Katie, thank you very much. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mark, thank you. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Okay, the motion passes. The District 3 changes begin on page 12 of your packet, as I mentioned, and we'll just turn it over to John. If there's anything you wanted to highlight, John Rank, on the adjustments here in District 3.
Nothing major really to highlight, Steve. Just as you noticed through the packet, there's a few instances where we're moving from in-house to consultant design on a few projects. The other thing to mention would be the County Bridge number 50 in Northumberland is moving out, and we're doing adjustment on these actions. And just other than that, it's just basically just adjustments to this project schedule updates. And I'll take any questions.
Okay, thank you, John. Any questions for John? Okay, do we have a motion to approve the District 3 administrative modifications?
This is Eric
Motion
Sale.
by
I'll make
Lincoln,
the
thank
motion.
you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by John Delvecchio. Thank you, John. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Okay, the District 2 and District 3 changes are approved. And we will get an electronic modification up to Carrie for review for the amendment in District 2 here after the meeting. Other items on here is just our normal listing of projects that were previously approved, pending available funding by the MPO. And usually this is where we tuck in the ARC local access roads. And so the Stevens Grove and Milton Borough projects are still advancing. When we get those finalized, we'll share those dates in this table for you. And hopefully they'll be meeting those let dates that we currently show for early 2023. And if you do have candidates, I know Betsy Lockwood is still looking for ARC local access roads. And I think there's some additional funding through DCD, in conjunction with the bipartisan infrastructure law. So if you have local access road candidates, please be working on those with your partners and let Betsy know as you identify those. Next is agenda item E. It's our normal CSVT project and State Route 54 project updates. We did include in the packet on page 20. It's a press release. Probably a lot of you have seen some of the big news. The northern section is going to be opening up in July. And ahead of that, there's a special public opportunity for anyone to go out and walk and bike. There's a little waiver involved, as part of that that will need to be completed or filled out. But that event will be on June 25th. And so that press release, the details are in the packet. And then we'll just turn it over to John. I know there are a couple of things he wanted to touch on to give us an overall update on CSVT and maybe the public official event as well.
Thanks, Steve. Good morning, everybody. I'm just going to jump right into it since we're a little behind. Just to kind of a little more elaborate on what Steve said, yes, there is going to be open to a public walking and biking event on Saturday, June 25th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. You need to be there at least by 2 p.m. though, as we'll be shutting it down at 2 p.m. But as far as taking any more people in, but again, we'll be, open to the public. You have to sign a waiver when you're there, or I think you can go online to the csvt.com site and you can print out a waiver and sign it and bring it if you would like. But we should have them there to be able to sign as well. And again, open up everybody. It's at the Ridge Road interchange is where you'll be parking. And again, open to walking and biking, the whole northern section. To kind of move on from there, there is also going to be an invitation-only ribbon cutting groundbreaking ceremony held on June 29th, Wednesday at 10:30 a.m. And then we anticipate opening the northern section open to traffic in mid-July, by mid-July, I should say. Moving on to the southern section, the first earthwork contract was officially awarded to Trumbull Corporation in early May, and notice to proceed was issued on May 16th. Final design work continues for the second structure contract and the third paving contract. We're really right now mostly focused on the structure contract with the 9 new bridges. And FHWA is currently reviewing our final design noise analysis, and we anticipate receiving their approval to move forward with public coordination this summer related to the proposed noise barriers that will be also included in the second contract. That is my CSVT update. I'll take any questions.
I do have a question. Can you hear me, John?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. My daughter lives right on Ridge Road and she has 3 little kids. Is it safe for little kids to walk out there? Or is there adequate railings and stuff to keep them from falling off? I know it's not designed for pedestrians.
No, as it is not designed. I think what we're going to do is just keep cordon off the edges of the bridge, I guess you could say is the best way, and everybody's going to be pushed to the middle.
Okay.
So, I believe from what I understand, it's safe to to be, walk or bike on it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
I myself,
signature, infrastructure project and landmark. So thanks again. I know this committee and the MPO have been out on tours in the past and expressed an interest in having this kind of event. So thanks for doing this special one-time opportunity, and I'm glad you're conducting it. Thanks, John.
yeah, and myself, I will not be crossing the bridge. I'm pretty afraid of heights, so I'll walk up to it, look at it, and turn around and walk back. Moving on with Route 54 and the 642 intersection improvement, the final right-of-way plan is currently in review. The waterway permit has been submitted to DEP for review, and the NPDES permit will be submitted to DEP by the end of this month for review. Coordination with Geisinger Health System and their engineers began late in December 2020. However, Geisinger is no longer looking to develop the land adjacent to SR 54090, which is this project at this time. They are currently exploring other sites outside this project area. And we anticipate bid it to be opening spring of 2023. And I'll take any questions. Also, to follow up on Greg Moulter's question, we can have a meeting with the local officials before we officially let the project. We can have a small meeting, but if there wants to be some more larger meeting as far as technical availability of maps and computer generated and having the consultants there, we'd probably have to talk about that a little bit more.
Thank you, John. Any questions for John about the Route 54 safety project in Montour County? Okay, great. Hearing none, we'll go ahead and transition to agenda item F. It's our normal reporting on the work program, staff activities that are shown in your packet, starting on page 22. Several of these are going to be action items we have a little bit later on the agenda, but I'll just mention briefly here on page 23. If you haven't seen in the news or the press releases from PennDOT did finalize its long-range transportation plan, 2045 LRTP, and that'll help shape our next long-range plan update. So we'll certainly be referring to that, and also the comprehensive freight movement plan was updated as well. So if counties are doing comprehensive plan updates or other things you're looking at, that's a good way to make sure that the goals and objectives within there are consistent with what you're working on at a local level as well. So we wanted to highlight that. Also, the PennDOT Pathways Initiative. If you hadn't seen the news, the PA Commonwealth Court issued an order to halt the activity on the major bridge P3 initiative. So that's kind of stalled. For now, we'll monitor more updates as they come out and how that larger funding picture comes together. But for now, that is stalled due to the Commonwealth Court order. On the Arley side, the automated red light enforcement grants, we did share a notice out prior to today's meeting with everyone that's opened up for the month of June. So if you're looking at a wide variety of safety projects, they can be funded through there. No local match requirement, although some skin in the game or local match is obviously nice to see and can make them more competitive. But we often see some traffic signal work, signage, pavement markings, bicycle pedestrian crossing upgrades, things of that nature be submitted. So that's out there, open through June 30th for application. Page 24 on the CSVT side, I know we got the update from John about the upcoming events. Just wanted to reference also that we were involved in a multimodal project discretionary grant application that PennDOT submitted to U.S. Department of Transportation, and that'll potentially, if awarded, help save some state dollars, stretch them further, and use them elsewhere on other needs. So we'll see if that is approved sometime later this year. But it was a pretty comprehensive application went in, and a sizable sum being requested. So hopefully we'll see some of that come in and be approved for the project, additional federal funding, and then help our state dollars go elsewhere and further. TA set aside update will be a little later, but we'll touch on that one. Those are the main things that I wanted to hit. And then just to highlight, Catherine added on page 26, the major employer and critical facility inventory. We're getting to that point in the calendar. We do that regular process and updates working with the county. So, Catherine, additional things you want to share on that, or just what to expect from the group?
Yeah, just keep an eye out on your email. Matt, our intern we've been working with, worked on the major employers listing, so we'll be sharing those out to everyone for you to review, and let us know if we missed anybody. And then we'll also be sending out the information to collect the county data, which we do every other year or so, and update that so that we can do the critical facility update. So both of those should be coming out within the next month or so. That's it.
Great, thank you, Catherine, and thank you everyone for your cooperation with that. It helps us build, a data set that's very useful for things we're looking at in transportation planning, and we appreciate all your support and your GIS departments in that activity. Final thing there on the bottom, page 26, I'll just mention the LTAP equipment operator training. We had done that again last Friday with Penn College. Very well received. All the participants, they had about 3 hours classroom, and then the rest of it was on site at the Penn College River Property Training Site. So they're operating backhoes, excavators, skid steers, wheel loaders, things of that nature, and getting good hands-on experience, and particularly helpful for where they have newer employees joining Public Works Department. So we're glad to continue to offer that and continue our relationship with Penn College. It's very well received, and so we'll do that again probably for next early June timeframe. That's from the staff report. We wanted to touch on other normal things we have in here are the various scoping field views that were held and that we had met or participated on. A variety of bridge projects and culvert projects there for your reference. And if you have questions, we can get the meeting summary notes off to you. On the TA set aside, page 29, we'll mention that there's a ribbon cutting being held, and Kim Wheeler has joined us. You probably are monitoring this and know all the activity, but for the Bull Run Greenway phase 1 in Lewisburg Borough, June 24th will be the ribbon cutting for that. A lot of great successes there with that project, and the TA set aside for the trail connection to the Buffalo Valley Rail Trail that was completed with the TA set aside funding and some of the other related kind of stormwater mitigation activities. So glad to see that, and really just leaves us with the North Branch Canal Trail as the only project that has to go to construction yet from that 2018 round. And the Brown Township Streetscape project in Mifflin County was completed from what I had seen construction in May. So that one's wrapped up in Lark's area in Brown Township. And Katie, was there any additional updates? I know there's some things happening with the Clinton County Rail Trail or the Bald Eagle Valley Trail and the Railroad Bridge and some Peregrine Falcons, I guess.
Yeah,
as well.
our construction came to a screeching halt in mid-May because Peregrine Falcons decided while the bridge was under construction with heavy equipment and lots of noise and swarms of people, they decided to come and lay their eggs on one of the bridge piers. And they're actually lifting the railroad ties off the bridge with heavy equipment and then building some deck and then lifting some more. And they lifted some up and they saw the nest. Instant stoppage. And so we're stopped. The construction contract ends June 30th. The birds aren't supposed to fledge until the 20th. So we're going to have like 8 additional weeks of August, which isn't making them happy, and 8 additional weeks of our inspection contract. So, and that was to cap off just, imagine what COVID does to these projects with supply chain and with personnel and everything. And that project was, notice to proceed was March 2021. And we're still there. We're supposed to be finished in August 2021. But we're looking at a ribbon cutting in mid-August.
Well, thanks for your resiliency and how you adapted to everything. There's contingency costs and plans you put in place, but that certainly wasn't one that probably factored into the equation for the nesting there. So
No, and there's been a big hoopla because the first time the Game Commission wanted photos to identify how old they are to predict when they would leave. And so our tourism director has a really excellent camera, and I was having lunch with her that day, and I said, could you come? So we went up on the bridge, and she got some really good photos. Well, the next time someone attempted to take photos, we got dive bombed by the parents, and nobody can go in, even on foot anywhere near it now, because the parents just come after them. So it's been fun.
well, thank you for that update and all you're working through, and it's going to be, we're talking about signature
is
events
cool.
with the CSG. That's going to be a signature project in that.
And the name of the bridge is gonna be the Falcon Bridge of the Bald Eagle Valley Trail. So we're gonna be all about raptors.
I know Don's a big birder, so yeah, you can appreciate that kind of.
Did you train him to have a flyover?
Yeah, really.
Cutting? Okay, cool.
Well,
I
thank
thought
you,
it was
Ben, for the-
Bald Eagle Valley. Come on.
Yeah,
From the 2021 round, we had shared in April, PennDOT had approved the projects from our region and statewide. The Bald Eagle Valley Trail Phase 5 was one of those in Clinton County for their extension and further work on that. So we're glad to see that approved. And also the Market Street streetscape in the city of Sunbury. So we had those 2 projects out of the 5 were approved from our region. And so those are starting to spin up, get kickoff meetings and get the engineers underway on those projects for designing them. And I think by September of next year is when they're supposed to be ready for construction bidding. So we'll continue to monitor the activity and report back to the group. And then if you have other TA set aside type projects, what we're hearing is summer of next year will be probably the next solicitation. So keep that in mind as you're working locally on additional TA set aside type projects. Just in the sake of time, since we had some delays with getting started, I won't touch on the other items here within the normal staff reporting and the work program, but any questions from anyone?
I'll just ask this real quick question. I know you mentioned the Infrastructure and Jobs Act, and every time I get a chance, whether or not it's our senator staff or whether or not it is federal highway people or whether it be variety of different people at the state level, I ask if there's ever going to be technical assistance being provided to help with federal grant applications. And I get this same story from pretty much everybody. Well, there's a guide who basically shows you how to apply for it, but really, I don't know if that's really that great of an idea, but I'm glad Kim's team, because hopefully we're gonna have part of this conversation this afternoon with the rest of the all planners. But this seems like this might be a good opportunity to look at more regional opportunities for similar kinds of projects. That obviously this Infrastructure and Jobs Act is competitive grant funding opportunities, and I know, speaking for myself, Mifflin County wouldn't really have an opportunity to apply for most of those grant sources just because of the efforts that are needed to put an application together.
Burdensome.
But I just want to put that out there, that that's something I'm thinking about, and hopefully that is an opportunity that passes us by, because certainly there are a lot of different grant sources and money out there for a variety of different projects that would certainly improve the region. And if we could look at it regionally, I'd love to hear that. So I guess why I bring it up is that, just keep your ears open if different people or different organizations or different legislators are providing that opportunity. I'd love to hear that. I even spoke to Deputy Secretary Granger, for example, about that. He's very PC answer, but it's not really what I'm looking for. I mean, hopefully we can have that conversation soon, but I just want to put that out there. It seems like there's an opportunity, and hopefully we can look at that. So, thank you. Not necessarily a grant.
Bringing someone that will organization how to write a grant or someone that writes a grant for you. I don't know.
Maybe either.
Yeah, we'll kind of park that, I think, maybe for the discussion afterward.
We're going to have a planning directors meeting immediately following this meeting, and it's something that has continued to come up in this group, but from what you talked about, Lamar, it seems like it's not just the training, it's actually having the personnel capacity to actually undertake the effort of seeking the funds, writing the grant, and maybe even managing them, when they come to you, for sure, right now, with the influx of stimulus funds and all the coffers being, sort of pumped up right now, there's a lot of funds out there, and rural regions are historically the ones that sort of fall behind because we just don't have the capacity to just go after them. So how do we put those resources together? We talked a little bit about that, ironically, but it's worth continuing to recognize, because you're right, we're not getting from the state and federal,
So we'll continue to monitor it and share resources. And I know there's various webinars being held. There's playbooks along with the comprehensive guides that have been released that are a little bit more fine-tuned and especially helpful, I think, for rural regions to tap into and access the funding, and prioritization going for underserved areas and for rural areas. So yeah, kind of these kind of more conversations for building the capacity, looking regionally, multi-county, multi-municipal. And I know Katie's done that for some grants you've done, Tioga and like Wyoming in the past. So yeah, we'll continue to support that and monitor it.
I'm hearing from townships that I visit that they, I'll mention Arley grants or different things that I get from SEDA COG in my email. And they go, we don't have the staff to write that. We don't have anybody smart enough to do it, is another comment I get.
Yeah.
Yeah, the guidebooks and the webinars only go so far, and that's been the response from, our staff too, is we just, we're maxed out.
Plus, they don't have the confidence. That's the other thing, they don't have the confidence to try.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, though, that's one of the things that we have been talking about as a group of, from the planning side anyway, which is that's why organization exists. And so we don't have to have somebody at every meeting, if that's that. So how do we leverage that?
Thing that's being so new and things trickling out. PennDOT as well is trying to get its full arms around this, and I think they're working with some consultants to identify how do we best pursue and use the funding, allocate it, et cetera. So as we hear maybe more from Terry and other program center about that, we can share that as well for the kind of strategies that they're developing for all this increased federal funding as well. So multiple pieces of the pie. So thank you for the comment. Next we have is agenda item G, and this is something that always precedes the TIP adoption every 2 years. It's a self-certification resolution is included in your packet, page 34. So essentially we have to identify and certify that the MPO is carrying out the transportation planning process in accordance with all the federal, legislative and regulatory requirements. So it spells out the various Code of Federal Regulations and sections and parts there for you. And then we have the exhibit items that provide some additional support. So since we're a smaller MPO, under 200,000, we have to do this kind of self-certification. It's not done through audits or reviews by the federal government or by PennDOT. So that's included in your packet. It starts on page 34, as I mentioned, and then additional supports in the exhibit and 2 attachments just to show how we're doing our public advertisements, addressing those regulatory requirements there, and then just an example of a fiscal constraint chart for an amendment as well. So are there questions about that before we entertain a motion to approve this resolution, sign it, and then it gets incorporated into our TIP submission? Any questions or comments? If not, we would look for a motion to approve the self-certification of the MPO's planning process. Okay, thank you, Mark. Properly moved by Mark Felicity, second by Lincoln Kaufman. Thank you. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you very much. That passes, and this is a good segue right into our next agenda item H, and that's the 2023 to 2026 Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP adoption. We didn't include in the packet the TIP project listing. We've been going through that the past couple rounds of meetings, and that's all online, links that we had referenced in our meeting announcement as well. But we did just want to summarize some of the activity during the public comment period here. So that's what's in your packet, pages 41 to 72. So you see on April 22nd when the TIP was open for public comment. That ran through May 23rd. You see the various outlets and means we use to share information and solicit public input there: newsletters, social media, legal ads, interested parties, email that went out to over 300 individuals. And then the public meeting was on May 9th up at Union County Government Center in the evening, and that had a virtual option as well. We had 15 participants, so we were pretty pleased with that. I think we had 6 in the room and 9 joining us virtually. So we were glad to have them participate and learn some more information. We didn't get any comments that night on the TIP or any forums. But we did get a couple that were shared. A couple were just administrative cleanup of a few things. On page 43 is where that begins on transit projects. Nothing to change, the actual project mixture, but there was a request from the Bureau of Public Transportation to tag the public narrative descriptions to the transit asset management plan target. So Terry took care of that for us and addressed that. So what we submit to PennDOT will reflect that item. Item 2 on your list there on page 44, there was a funding correction. Some of the bridge off of Federal and the new BRIP bridge funding coming out of the federal infrastructure bill. What was in the financial guidance allocation didn't match the exact amounts that were on the draft TIP project listing. They were off just slightly. So there was a change made there, District 3, and the chart is included in this section of the packet. You can see that. So we weren't dropping projects off, we weren't adding projects. It was just to balance out the amounts from the financial guidance with what was actually programmed for those bridge projects. And the third one was something in the general procedural guidance. We had to identify system level estimates of state and local revenues, beyond what's in financial guidance for the TIP update, and typically not programmed yet operate and maintain federal aid highways. So PennDOT had prepared that listing and the amounts, and so we will submit that with our TIP submission as well. So those are kind of just clean up, quick, minor administrative things. Then from the general public, there on point 4 in the table, we did receive from Samantha Pearson some public comments. You'll see our just brief response in that table of how we'll consider future enhancements, and then a detailed response follows. And we made a couple corrections to the environmental justice analysis just to clean up some things with some images. We have some poor resolution on and reflected something in terms of some of the mapping and references on the distribution of some of that. So those were made for what we'll submit with the TIP update as well. So that's a summary of the comment process. We included a meeting summary of the May 9th meeting. If you didn't participate or listen to the recording, you can get the synopsis there on page 54 of the packet that begins. And you can see the participants that we did have in the meeting. Next on page 59 is what documents are required to be submitted with the TIP to PennDOT. So those have all been completed. Now with signing the self-certification resolution here today, we'll get that packaged and bundled up as well. So there's a checklist that we need to complete on page 60, and you'll see all the yes statements there. And just a caveat on page 63 is some of the PennDOT Connects forums and outreach meetings haven't occurred. Just some of the things that we've encountered with the federal funding and trying to get those set up, but those will be scheduled later this year to make sure that those occur for municipal outreach, and also the project initiation forms for those. So those are the main things that I wanted to hit on with the TIP update, and just to toss it out for the members if you had any questions on those items, any of the supplemental documents that need to be submitted, anything on the TIP revisions, which are essentially the same on page 67, that MOU on those as well. So any questions, comments about the TIP, how we got to where we are? I know we've been summarizing that in prior meetings, but any questions, comments on the TIP or the process before we would entertain a motion to adopt it?
It seems to me the process has an awful lot to do with keeping track of everything you did.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just doing it, you have to do it and then tell everybody this is what we did. And it seems like a lot of extra labor is required in the process. And I'm not saying that's SEDA COG's fault, it's the requirements fault, but I mean, you do put the TIP in front of the public and you see their comments. You got a ton of comments from Samantha. You do put it in front of us and we discuss. Why do you have to discuss every single element of your work? It just seems like useless work.
Yeah, there's a lot of different layers there, and we do it every 2 years. Some other states, do it every 4 years, so it's not quite as much,
Right.
regular updating and effort there and documentation that needs to be
I
prepared.
mean, we appreciate the effort, but we don't need to know every detail of your job performance, nor does anybody in the state. the products that you're creating are valuable and valid. But that's my comment.
Sure, we'll take that.
Maybe to address that. There is many federal requirements that
I know.
and, you know, PennDOT even working with Ohio, try to see what actually do. And, PennDOT is actually other states. I was a part of it.
Yeah.
It's like New York State, Ohio, and Georgia. Talk to their DOT and the MPLR just to see how much is really needed. So,
And how
We're trying to
does it
streamline-
compare with Pennsylvania? and some of these others?
it's all different.
Yeah.
Because everybody has different processes and everybody has different relationships. So we have a good working relationship with our highway, good relationship with FTA. So we try to, every year, we try to streamline it. But it's very nice to hear from somebody else.
Yeah.
Somebody talk about it.
Yeah.
Give some comments.
Oh, well, I just realized, see how much
So
effort
that I
you put
can take
into,
that back.
into this, and
And say, hey, this is what.
is it really necessary?
Usually nothing's subtracted, it's just things are added to the process. So.
Right.
Absolutely. It's
Nothing's
always
ever
one more little
subtracted.
thing.
Sorry, Mike, get a comment?
One thing I would like to say is, I don't remember ever seeing these documents, I don't know if this was new, but the summary of everything you were doing, just like the checklist and just highlighting in this line item order of what you did and how you did it, to me would be extremely helpful just because it helps succinctly identify a very complicated, long process in a couple of pages, which why I bring that up is, let's say you get a new elected official in your community, to try and explain to them how to get a project funded on the tip is not a short conversation. So are these the kind of documents that you think would be available to be able to share?
Oh, sure, yeah, you can
People,
share.
and I think it might be helpful to retroactively show what has been done in the past so they understand that this is the same pattern, same process, same things we're going to be doing. Next year, 3 years from there, every 2 years, for example. So I think it's helpful and I appreciate the effort there. I know what you're saying, and obviously there's a lot of effort to do that, but
Yeah.
I think that the idea is that the typical layperson in the street, they have no idea how to get a transportation project funded. So by being able to point to something like this and say, it's a complicated process, there's a lot of layers to the onion, and that here's a quick summary of all the things that would go into it, so that there's many stepping into points that a municipal official or community or a cabinet leader tend to be able to provide input and to see about different ways to get projects funded. So I appreciate that level, and it's helpful that this is here that we can potentially share.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Please do so. And then, usually in the off years, in the odd number of years, Zoom will come out to each of the counties. And if you want to involve your commissioners in that, it's certainly fine. A lot of times, the plan director and your bridge engineer, but depending on want to participate in that process, and we're looking at that and prioritizing it. And if they want to either submit comments directly to us or use the State Transportation Commission process, those always get factored and reflected, and there's a good mapping that is behind that as well. Kind of look at those priorities, and we can kind of cluster the analysis on them. So, but yeah, thank you for that feedback. Any other questions, comments on the TIP development? If not, like I said, there weren't any changes to the project, mixture or listing. It was just some of the balancing of the funds remains the same from what we presented back in April for taking out for comments. So if there isn't any further discussion or comment, we would look for a motion to approve the 2023 SEDA COG tip and submission of all the documents related to the PennDOT. Motion by Lincoln, thank you very much. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Katie, thank you. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign.
Just feedback after, I appreciate all your work, Ashley's work, John Ray, Mark Schultz, everyone else in the district offices, and on. A lot of work to start up here in January of 2023 with work groups, and Steve is actually on the future on financial guidance.
Yep.
So Steve's right at the table. talking with other state agencies about how the formulas are getting. So it's good to have somebody in the region have that kind of insight. So thanks for everything that tip update. It's rolling next spring again.
Sure. Yep. It doesn't set for long before it just begins again. So, and thank you. It's a great collaboration amongst all the local governments and entities, PennDOT at the district and central office level, and ourselves. And like Max Milker says, pretty much the tip is like a mini long range plan anymore. So that's kind of what it's become. Thank you everybody for that, and we reached that milestone. So we'll get the submission to PennDOT, and then the new tip will take effect October 1st. And you'll see a kind of a variety of changes at that point as we get the change over from the current 2021 tip to the 2023 tip. So don't be alarmed. You see a lot of adjustments occur when we get to the fall meeting.
Quite a few, because as we all know, cost of fuel and other inflation, everything's going up. So something that's gonna go out for bid in, January, it'll be coming out of the tip. Somebody will have to obligate it, or getting covered funds, by the increase. So now it's always right. Don't worry about it when we get to October.
Right. More to come. Next on our agenda, another action item. Agenda item I is the Title VI program adoption. As we've been discussing the last couple of meetings, guidance coming out of the federal government and state government was to make sure that these are on the same schedule, our public participation plan, our limited English proficiency plan, and they're now components of a larger Title VI program. So we've been working on that the past several months and getting those updated, reflecting current standards and regulations and things that we're doing differently, virtual participation as far as how we're, engaging the public and otherwise. And we've had Gannett Fleming supporting some of our work on the plan here, cleaning up some of the documents and helping us with public involvement activities throughout. So Michelle Brummer has been our primary contact at Gannett Fleming and assisting us, and she presented the Title VI program piece at our May 9th meeting where we combined the TIP and the Title VI program comment periods. And this one ran a little bit longer since a public participation plan has to be a 45-day comment period. So it wrapped up on June 6th, but there were no comments submitted. We did make a couple minor changes just in the past week or so. The resolution that's in your packet, page 74, took off the watermarks there, and it's adopted here today. We'll sign that. That'll go into the packet. The comment period, activity, milestones have been updated, and that'll be in it. And then the changes that we made for the environmental justice analysis as part of the TIP. So those will be reflected in the final program. So Michelle's going to go through a PowerPoint. I think she can hopefully hear us okay. And we have the slides brought up. Michelle, if you would like to take it away for presenting this, please.
Sure. And I'll tread lightly since Katie just made that remark about kind of compliance. Sometimes it feels so burdensome, but I would say that the reason the federal government puts this into place and sort of hands this alongside the responsibility for transportation planning and the dollars for, prioritizing funding or dollars for transportation projects in your region, it is in the interest of being fair and equitable to everyone. So the Title VI program is really focused on making sure that that happens, and the associated documents within that, making sure that those are updated to reflect the current population, because demographics, socioeconomics, those things are changing. And like Steve said, our technology is changing, how we communicate with one another, et cetera. So I'll try and move through this pretty quickly. Okay, next slide,
Michelle,
please.
excuse me for interrupting, but not asking you to yell, but can you speak up a little bit more as well?
Sure, happy to. Next slide, please.
We could play it, and we might be able to hear some presentation. Call it on the set like your cell phone.
Yeah, maybe for time, we'll just have her continue if you can't hear.
Steve, please restate that.
Go ahead, Michelle. Just
keep going.
With the delays, we'd have to get the ID number and all that kind of stuff. And
Okay, next slide, please. Sorry, it's not changing. It's not advanced on my screen. I'll just talk and you can catch up. The first slide talks about what the Title VI program is, in case anyone isn't familiar. The idea of kind of what I just introduced, that you're a federally designated transportation agency. You have the responsibility of programming those dollars toward projects, and how that process takes place needs to have both opportunities for public participation, that's codified through the Code of Federal Regulations, as well as Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, and that's applied to transportation planning in a separate element of the CFR. There's little visual snippets of those, sort of where those that language comes from and the responsibility for doing those sorts of things. The MPO's Title VI program then is the documentation of what you say you're going to do, what you do, and what you have done to comply with those federal requirements. So the Title VI program, rather than being a big long narrative, it's actually an assembly of a bunch of different documents on slide 4. So there's some kind of procedure statements, there are some complaint procedures, there's some forms and things. Those do get updated from time to time in terms of just little bits of information that they need to include. There's documentation of complaints and investigations, if there have been any. Those are very much straight for Title VI kind of responsiveness. Then the public participation plan and the language assistance plan, or otherwise known as limited English proficiency plan, those which are originally sort of housed under the MPO's responsibilities, well, they come under the Title VI umbrella. Those documents are lettered E and F. There are some information statements about who's involved with the MPO. Do they sort of how they represent the population racially, specifically, and more generally by minority status. Couple of things about how you allocate funding to any subrecipients. That's not applicable to the MPO region. It's kind of in that standard checklist, as you can imagine, the agency might have. An equity analysis, if you built facilities, not applicable. On slide 5, proof of your Title VI program review and adoption. That's the resolution that's in your packet that we anticipate you'll act on in a little bit. Demographic profile of your region, that's changing all the time. We now have better access to information about that through the American Community Survey versus those decennial census with longer periods of time in between. Yeah, they're estimates, but they're at least an indication of how the region is changing. So that kind of information is letter K. A couple of other items there, statement about mobility needs for minority populations, demographic maps, hey, going back to those demographic changes. And finally, system investments and sort of how they are equitably or inequitably sort of impacting the region. This list, I imagine, got built from top to bottom, and it gets added on from time to time. So it might seem like things are in a kind of wacky order, but I think that's just the nature of the legislation. So there's like 15, 16 items there, most of which are applicable to the MPO, just 2 that are not. Steve already mentioned on slide 6 sort of why this update was important. We talked about changing demographics and so forth, changing communications, greater use of social media, virtual meetings that are now in play. I think it was certainly on the horizon and coming into use prior to the pandemic, but clearly the pandemic pushed many organizations into virtual meeting options and the public into acceptance of that and increased participation generally in terms of trends. So that is a reason to be updating these kinds of, how you're going to conduct public participation, what kinds of opportunities you're going to allow, how much transparency in your meetings and so forth. So keeping that information about the public and about communications up to date, that gets housed in the public participation document. There's certainly a compliance angle to this as well, and I cited that on number 6. So the primary updates to overall are to those things. I've kind of highlighted some of them, especially the public participation plan, and then the limited English proficiency plan as the population has changed. And there are, just increasing diversity in the region in terms of language and the need to give attention to that in both print, communications, and other communications. There's a couple of slides on the itemizing kind of the changes to the public participation plan, slides 7 and 8 and 9. We have shared those with the board when we had some focus group discussion back in late April, I believe it was. So some of that stuff has been mentioned in terms of the demographic updates, some language translation additions to the front pieces of major planning documents, saying that if you speak another language, you can get assistance, and those are provided in the native tongue of Spanish, Chinese, Vietnamese, Korean, and German speakers. That would be the practice moving forward. There's been some additional emphasis on modifications to ensure that folks with disabilities and limited English proficiency have equal opportunities to participate. While the sort of methods and strategies for public participation, the way notices go out, the way meetings are conducted, newsletter sharing, and so forth, while that was listed in the public participation plan before, there's now more detailed descriptions as was required. Increased emphasis on visualization. That's been a long-term trend, but that got documented here in this update. A couple of things on virtual participation in MPO meetings of the board, but also committee meetings. Those sorts of things are spelled out on 7, 8, and 9, but I think many of you have seen that information before, and like I said, in what we shared for the April meeting. Slide 10 shows, again, itemized changes in the limited English proficiency plan. This is very much focused on language, but it also goes back to the people, the public aspect of it. People speak language. So how and when you offer translation services, anything, I think generally the MPO looks at this as it's something we need to have available, but we don't have to be actively translating into multiple languages all the time. I would say the one exception to that in the Title VI program, we have both English and Spanish sort of complaint procedures, complaint forms, Title VI program statement, those sorts of things. But in terms of those other languages I mentioned, Chinese, Vietnamese, et cetera, those are sort of growing population segments in the region. Those and many other language services are available on a sort of on-call as needed basis. So making those kinds of statements publicly, we can get you those services. You can tie into them this way. Those are items that have been spelled out more thoroughly in the limited English proficiency plan. Last slide is just kind of sums up the process, which Steve had for the tip update above. Steve and the staff really did the primary effort in terms of getting the documents ready. Janet Fleming assisted. We had a board input in late April. We had some stakeholder focus group meetings. There were 38 agencies invited representing folks with limited income, senior population, minority population, et cetera. We had 8 people participate, generally gave positive and constructive feedback on what SEDA COG is doing and has done to date in terms of public participation. Maybe a few suggestions, but nothing that really rose to changing the draft as it had been prepared, and certainly some good thoughts for the future. So that was early input during development, and then there was a public review process launched at the same time. The draft tip was put out for public review. So again, it was posted on SEDA COG's website. There was a press release presented with Steve at the May 9th public meeting. And in the end, through the comment period that ended just on this Monday, there were no comments received, but there will be documentation that there was a review period nonetheless. So with all of that completed, I believe the draft Title VI program is ready for the MPO's consideration and adoption. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Michelle, for walking through that and summarizing it. Any questions for Michelle or myself, or any questions about the resolution before the board on page 74? Certifying Title VI program was completed, and that no one on grounds of race, color, or national origin be excluded for participation in, denied benefits of, or otherwise subjected to discrimination under the MPO's programs or activities. And that's regardless of any funding source. Obviously, we're receiving federal funding, but we're not going to be party or responsible for any discrimination and whatsoever. So, any questions about the Title VI program, what was been developed? If not, we'll continue to monitor things that come out from the federal government. You probably are seeing things on equity and Justice 40 out there. If we need to make revisions just in the future, we can. Calls for every 3 years to be evaluated and reviewed. So we'll do that and see if there are any major changes that need to be approved or acted on by the MPO board. So if there's no comments, we'll look for a motion to approve the SEDA COG 2022 Title VI program. Motion by Katie, thank you. Do we have a second? Second by Lincoln, thank you for the second. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Okay, hearing none, the motion passes. We're on to our final action item. So thanks for hanging with us through these action items, and I think we'll be pretty good on time. We got our technical hiccups and delays there in the early morning hours. So this is agenda item J. In your packet, beginning on page 76, is the proposed bylaws amendments for the MPO. This cover page is new, shows these were first adopted by the MPO in December of 2022 when we were going through that process of transitioning from an RPO to an MPO, and reflects an amended date here of June 10th. So what's in the packet hasn't changed from last time. Again, the primary adjustments were to make sure we were accounting for the virtual participation that we've been going through and cleaning up and updating our other plans to reflect. So spell that out here in the MPO bylaws. And also the special meeting provision, which we had been discussing. We kind of hit that again when we were doing a TIP amendment vote, and kind of through an eval and then the conference call option. And so we've eliminated that and now call for full compliance with the Sunshine Law. Some things have been raised by members and local government officials in the past on that. So that was a change, that there'll be a special meeting called for any TIP amendments that occur in between regularly scheduled MPO meetings. And so we'll do this kind of same option, hybrid, be in person. If you want to come to the meeting site, you can do virtually, and we'll make sure that we're contacting you in advance so that we have a quorum for the votes and then they can be acted on, and the timetables can be met if there need to be priority or urgent or emergency issues being addressed with some of these TIP amendments. So that'll be the onus and responsibility on us. So we'll make sure we get the materials for these special votes to you in enough time you can review them as well. And then final thing was just making sure we reflected some of the things we're doing as a normal business practice with posting all of our materials online, agendas and meeting packets and things of that nature. So those were really the changes that were reflected that we thought were important enough to consider revised bylaws. And these will also be taken to the SEDA COG board, since SEDA COG board directors had approved them back in early 2013 as well. And SEDA COG board appoints 3 members to the MPO. So we'll take these to the SEDA COG board for their endorsement as well, if they have your concurrence here for today for approval. So questions about the bylaws? One question I know came up last time, maybe it was you, Lincoln, addressing maybe some policy guidelines for meetings. And we did have a discussion with the rail authority solicitor, and he shared an example from a municipality, and his recommendation is not to put that kind of thing in the bylaws, keep these kind of more rigid things that you're not having to revise on a regular basis. So we can look into that further, investigate it, or if you have examples you want to share for kind of decorum things or public meeting guidelines that you have, like allowance for public meeting, the amount of time, or avoid Zoom bombing and that kind of stuff that occur. We can kind of develop those separate guidelines and use those and maybe provide them on a regular basis as needed. But that was the insight and the advice we got from at least the rail authority solicitor, who also is a solicitor for a number of local governments. Questions about the bylaws before entertaining a motion to approve them? If there are none, do we have a motion to approve the revised June 10th, 2022 SEDA COG MPO bylaws? We'll give the first to Carrie, thank you, and the second to Mark. Thank you so much for that. Properly moved to second. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you much. They're approved. We'll get those signed. And then taken to the SEDA board at their meeting later this month for endorsement as well. Agenda item K, we'll be hearing from Catherine, an update on the Active Transportation Committee and the work that's going on there.
Sounds good. So on page 86, I just made a quick little punch list for us to go over. Starting off with the meeting schedule for this 2022 to 2023 year. Our next meeting is the August 24th meeting, so if you're hoping to join, that would be a date for that. We are looking to purchase a set of trail counters. I think we're leaning toward the traffic ones right now. We'll purchase approximately 6 of them and start a process working with Michelle Byler from Bucknell on deploying those and getting some information from some of the trails in the region. If you'd like to see more about that, we had a pretty lengthy discussion at the last Active Transportation Committee meeting, so I can share those minutes with you, or if you have any comments on trail counters. I think we're going to move forward with those by the end of the month, so let us know if you have any other recommendations or
I have a
comments.
question, because Matt missed that last meeting, but will you decide where they're gonna be deployed and do it in some sort of methodical way, or are you just gonna lend them out when somebody said, hey, could I use your trail counter for a month or something?
Yeah, I think right now we're looking at like a prescribed usage. We're gonna work with Michelle and her students and pick off a listing of trails and just go through those. I think we discussed with her that we'd be able to get like 2 trails maybe a year off the list and do a count for them.
Rotate through them?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then probably after that point, we would entertain conversations about lending them out or using specific trails if someone comes out and reaches out to us and wants to see the information. So probably how we will function with that.
We'll tap into her expertise. She's used these units in the past and worked with her students, and they kind of do adjustment factors and do some manual counts. But I think we were looking at early on a minimum of 6 months to have them deployed, but probably now a year just to build that kind of seasonality and other, ebbs and flows of the traffic on the trails. And we've given her some candidate lists, and then as she just kind of deploys her resources for them, since we're tapping into her, we'll work with the group and take others that you may want to recommend or prioritize.
And then the work groups will be reconvening soon. Quite a few of those have been lapsed for the last little bit here. A couple other things I wanted to just point out. The Northumberland County Rail Trail Master Plan is in the process of being approved and reviewed by DCNR, and that will be posted for everyone to view by the public. That's detailing the plan running the trail, running the rail trail going through from Sunbury to Mount Carmel, I think is the ending point. Lots of conversation surrounding that. There's been quite a few public meetings, I believe, and a lot of response from the public on that. So it'll be interesting to see how that comes together. And then the other item I wanted to call out, and Mark, you can certainly speak to this too, is just the Mifflin Moves conversation that's been happening. So if you have anything you wanted to share, any updates on that?
Well, I think it's going well, actually. It was nice to have Michelle on the call because she's actually the lead consultant, kind of being our project manager for a project, which is nice because same firm as the one that did the regional plan. So we're trying to, I guess, make it as parallel as we can to the regional plan. And we've been having some good conversations, a good project. Just one quick commercial is that if you ever walk or bike or hike in Mifflin County, currently we're seeking public input, and we have a pretty cool interactive online map you can go and put information on. I know that working with Steve and Catherine, that we were able to get that link added to the last SEDA COG newsletter that went out, so thank you for that. But hopefully that will result in some good information. And the cool thing about that is somebody that provides input will have the chance to win a $50 gift certificate to a local bike shop. Thank you.
And the last thing I'm just going to touch on quickly on page 87, there's a little front and back notice about the Safe Streets and Roads for All funding that's coming through. total of $1 billion. There's some details here on this printout, and then on the website, there is quite a bit more information. I believe they even have a webinar posted, if I'm not mistaken, or they are going to have a webinar. So if you are interested in learning more about that, please, by all means, check that out and reach out to us if you need any assistance in navigating that. Does anybody have any questions on any of that?
Thanks, Catherine. Appreciate it. We're on the agenda item L, member forum. The only thing I think I'll highlight here is the second one on page 90, the Rabbit Transit Stop Hopper Micro Transit Service. We've been continuing to collaborate and coordinate. I know we've given updates, and David Juba, their planning manager at Rabbit Transit, was on a prior MPO meeting giving you some updates about the deployment of that, the 3 zones within the SEDA COG MPO region, those being the Sealands Grove to Sunbury, the Lewisburg to Milton, and the Danville to Bloomsburg. So the Sealands Grove to Sunbury was the earliest, late last year, and they're seeing great success in the usage so far. Was able to connect David to the Greater Susquehanna Valley Chamber for their transportation committee meeting this morning, and he prepared a PowerPoint and shared that with me. I can get it out to the entire group here. You can see some of the stats of what they're experiencing on their ridership and some of the maps, and you can see some of the flows of where people are going between home to work or shopping, grocery retail, medical appointments, things of that nature. But yeah, they're quite impressed and exceeded their expectations, at least so far in the Sealands Grove to Sunbury zone. So I can share that PowerPoint. If you have questions, comments, feel free to let us know, or we could maybe get David on the agenda for a future meeting if you want to have him present again and hear more directly and ask questions of him. But we're glad to see that kind of hybrid between fixed route and your normal call ride or paratransit service being deployed in our region, and special state funding that's going for it. And then Catherine was able to review. Is there a comment? Then Catherine reviewed the DCNR trail grants for 2022. So those comments are on page 93. MPO related comments on the trail submissions there from some of the off-highway vehicle trails, heritage trails, Bloomsburg River Trail, and Sealands Grove walkability trail study. So those were submitted to DCNR for consideration, and when those approvals come down, if you don't see them, we can get those in a future MPO meeting packet as those are announced. Now, anything from the rest of the members you want to discuss? Anything that was presented today? Anything going on in your regions that you want to bring out for the good of the order or discussion? Anyone online? You all still able to hear us, hopefully?
Yeah, we can hear you. I just have some exciting news. I know it's not really related, but anyone in the Bloomsburg area next Saturday on June 18th, we will have a dog park opening from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So you can come out, and if you have a dog, certainly bring him or her with you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. Is that down near Town Park, or where will that be?
Yep, right across from the swimming pool on Catherine Street, so near the river.
Thank you. All you dog lovers and owners, feel free to take them out there and let them play around with the other dogs. Anything else anyone wants to raise or discuss? Okay, if not, we got right on track from our early difficulties and delays. Thanks for your forbearance and patience with us for the audio visual stuff and links and everything. But 11:15, that we have a motion to adjourn. Motion by Gary, you have a second? Second by Lincoln. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, no opposition. Thank you so much. And those of you that are sticking around for the next meeting, I guess that'll begin in 15 minutes.